The conventional treatment options for endo are not that great. The surgeon told me I could get back on the pill or I could get pregnant as soon as possible. Those were the suggestions he gave to me. And, being on the pill for a decade and finally getting off of it, I was starting to feel like myself again.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. I'm Sarah Clark, and my mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Most of all, I want you to wake up. So with functional medicine, we can discover what causes infertility and eventually reverse the condition. Today, I'm welcoming Aubree Deilmer to the podcast, and we're digging into the energetics of endometriosis and what it means for your fertility. When Aubree was 29 years old, she was officially diagnosed with endometriosis. She realized that she did not want to treat it with drugs or surgery. Instead, she took an alternative road on a journey of whole healing, on a physical, emotional, and spiritual level, and the rest is history. As a certified integrative wellness coach and the founder of Peace with Endo movement, Aubree is deeply passionate about wellness and inspiring other women with endometriosis to reconnect with a life filled with love and positive rhythms. Meet Aubree and stay in the know about her upcoming happenings at peacewithendo.com. And before we jump into today's show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this to make sure you never miss an episode. Hey, Aubree, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I was excited to chat to you about this subject. So, we met in person back in 2014 when we both had our book launches there with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
Did.
Which was like, oh my goodness, like 4 years ago. Like, where'd that time go? I think in the meantime, you've written 2 more books. You've been on fire.
I do have another book coming out. Yes.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah. So can you share with us how you got into this line of work, your journey with us?
Absolutely. So I work with women that have endometriosis, and that stems from my personal story. So I was officially diagnosed with endo in 2011. And it was only a few months before that I'd even heard of endometriosis. It wasn't a word that was in my vocabulary. Mm-hmm. So I have struggled with extremely painful periods my entire life, ever since the beginning. And, growing up was told that's normal. It's a normal part of being a woman. You get cramps with your period. But I definitely didn't notice my friends struggling like I did. Mm-hmm. So it kind of became my normal. My mom always had issues as well. So I started taking the pill when I was 17, which did help me a lot with the pain that I was having with my period. Of course, came with other side effects I didn't recognize at the time. Started having a lot of digestive type issues and crazy mood swings. But I ended up staying on the pill for a decade of my life. So I got off of them when I was 27. And that was really when things started to progress again. So as my natural hormones started to wake up, the pain with my periods came back and progressively got worse to a point where I was struggling most of the month with chronic pain, pelvic pain, again, having digestive type issues. I was having weird symptoms coming up. I was spotting, I was having pain after sex and bleeding, and all of these weird things were coming up. And I was missing work a lot. When my period would start, I wasn't able to work. So I was calling in, at least once a month. And when I did go in, when I happened to somehow drag myself in, it was obvious that I wasn't well. And it was actually one of my coworkers who first even mentioned endometriosis to me. One of her friends had it, and she's like, "Hey, I think you might have this too." And like I said, I'd never even heard of this. Mm-hmm. So I started researching online and spending some time in support groups primarily, and, listening to these other women's stories and their symptoms, and pieces kind of started to fall together. Like, I think I do have this. So I ended up approaching my gynecologist about it. And the only way to know for sure at the moment if you have endometriosis is to have surgery. They go in laparoscopically and look around with a camera and cut out what they find. So I ended up having the surgery a couple of months after I had that conversation with my gynecologist, and was confirmed that I did have endometriosis. So The conventional treatment options for endo are not that great. The surgeon told me I could get back on the pill or I could get pregnant as soon as possible. Those were the suggestions he gave to me. And, being on the pill for a decade and finally getting off of it, I was starting to feel like myself again. I didn't realize just how much it was affecting me on a mental level. So decided I didn't want to go back down that route. And that's really where the journey started, as I made the decision to follow more of a holistic path. So I found people online. I think you talked to Melissa Turner, I think, on the past.
Yes.
Melissa was a huge inspiration for me initially. Being able to manage endometriosis holistically. So I started with diet, was really my first step into the holistic world, with the quote unquote endo diet. Started cutting out a lot of things and started to feel better, significantly better. So that just kind of snowballed. I'm a researcher, I'm a forever student. So as I started to feel better, I just wanted to feel better, even better. So I didn't realize, I guess, how bad I was feeling before, until you start to feel better.
That's right.
So that's ultimately what led me to IIN, so to school at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, kind of looking for something. I've been in school for a long time. I was in school for over a decade doing business and political science and all these things I thought I wanted to do. I wanted to be a politician at one point. No longer. But I kind of stepped into this world of health and went to school at IIN. And it was really during that time that things started opening up. My awareness started opening up about, the definition of health. And it wasn't just diet. There's more things to consider. So that's really where things started. And I think, through my journey, I'm a writer, so that's how I process things. So I did start a blog over at peacewithendo.com, started sharing what I was learning and connecting with other women. And I've learned a lot from the community in general of talking with other women that have endo. So unfortunately, it's a condition that's not, there's not a lot of solutions out there in the conventional medical community. It's hormones, it's surgery, it's things that have long-term side effects and aren't necessarily very effective. So it was helpful to have a community of women that I started chatting with and get some ideas, and just started kind of dug in and was experimenting with so many things at the beginning.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story on that. I interviewed the director of Endo Shannon Cohn, I think her last name was. What's her last name? And she's on podcast episode. Where's that episode? Let me just episode number 23. Yeah, Shannon Cohn. And yeah, she talked. I think the average length for someone to get diagnosed is like 10 to 12 years. Before, as you say, as 17, put on the birth control pill, and they had all these side effects that affected your mood. I also interviewed Holly Grigg Spall about the pill, and she had the same thing when she was on birth control, where it really impacted her mood. I've got Jolene Brighton coming on to talk about the post birth control pill syndrome. That one's going in February. It'll be going live. But yeah, like a lot of these things where the conventional treatment is like, let's go on the pill. Then when you came off, you had all pelvic pain, digestive issues, painful sex, and then then your journey to kind of start to recover, really starting off with diet, but that's just the beginning. Yeah. So what are some dietary recommendations for someone with endo? What did you do, and what I guess works for your clients?
So a big part of it is reducing inflammation in your body. So removing some of the problematic foods. But I think before even stepping into that, my focus has been to add in good stuff. So eating, lots of fruits, lots of veggies, lots of good whole foods, and staying away from the processed type foods. So general rule there. For me, cutting out, wheat and dairy and soy is another big one. I stay away from eggs. I stay away from corn. So I know at first that feels like a long list and is overwhelming. So, through my studies at IIN, that's one of the things we learned, right, was to add in. So that's more or less what I try to focus with my clients at first is, okay, let's focus on getting in the good stuff instead of just focusing on like, I'm cutting out all of these things and getting stressed out and overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those, looking organic and really, not shopping the periphery, the grocery store and getting rid of the processed foods, and then digging into, we have people do the elimination diet. So it sounds like you're kind of on a modified version of that. Yeah. And I don't do dairy, gluten, or corn, so I'm there with you. Yeah. People are like, what? But I don't know, it is kind of the thing where you don't know you feel so poorly until you start feeling awesome. Absolutely. And what about red meat? What's your take on that one?
Red meat is not necessarily the best, so I try to stay away from that. Definitely harder to digest. And, those larger animals, when they're slaughtered, they've got more adrenaline in the meat. And adrenaline, a lot of us with hormonal type issues are going to be sensitive to adrenaline. So personally, I steer clear from red meat. I do it occasionally, but I don't recommend doing it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And so for you, do you have your clients do an elimination, or how is it? Is it more just because how did you figure out for yourself the wheat, dairy, soy, eggs, corn thing?
Mm-hmm. So more or less, those are foods that are bothersome. So there's a Endo diet that's out there that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Start with that. I think initially came from a gal named Caroline Levitt, who's somebody that I found and connected with when I first started the journey. So I kind of use that as a baseline, but it's more or less experimentation, because everybody's going to be different. But those are kind of the core foods that are problematic for most people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and everybody's at a different point in their journey when I work with clients. So some people are more into the food. They're already past that. Some people are very at the beginning stages where it's kind of, let's take it a step at a time again and focus on adding in the good stuff and kind of crowding out those bad foods.
Mm-hmm. And then, so there's the diet piece. And now I'll kind of like switch gears a little bit and kind of getting into, because this is your new book about more of the energy medicine side of things. And I haven't read it, but I think it comes out February 22nd. Did I see that?
Does, yes, February.
Yeah, awesome. I remember that. Yeah. So, and so let's kind of like talk about how some of these lifestyle changes, particularly energy medicine, that can help with endo.
Yes. So, I started the book because another part of my story has been the fertility piece. I've struggled with infertility. It's been almost 10 years now that I've been trying. And, as I worked through IIN and connected with other coaches in the program, that's when this whole idea of chakras and energy started entering my vocabulary. So kind of intuitively thought that there's some other stuff going on. Like I've got some kind of blocks going on, because I'm doing everything right, as far as, or so I think, with I'm eating, I was managing stress, I was doing all these positive changes. And yet I still, one, was having extreme pain with my period still, which was frustrating to me after making all of these changes. Like I still had this horrible pain. And then I've struggled to get pregnant. So those were kind of the two main things that were fuel for me to write this new book. And, being a writer, that's how I process things, is by writing them out. And I feel like that's a way for me to connect on a higher spiritual level, to my higher self, is through pen to paper type communication. So I just started free flow writing kind of on this topic. What's going on? Are there deeper things that are going on emotionally and energetically? And that's definitely where the book led to. So kind of put out that intention, like I'm going to figure out what's going on, started writing. And part of what I tell in the story is just setting an intention on how I want to feel. It's kind of how everything started. If you're familiar with Danielle Laporte and her desire map, that's kind of the leading question, like, how do I want to feel? So that's kind of how the journey started. I wanted to feel freedom was one of my main words. So I set that intention out into the universe, and things started coming to me, the information that I needed. As I was writing this book, synchronicities kind of started happening. People that I needed started coming into my life. So that's more or less what the story is, this unfolding of almost awareness of these deeper things that are going on an emotional type level.
And so through the writing of the book, was it kind of a cathartic process for you? Like, what did you uncover?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of emotions coming up as I started to address some things from the past. And I did start pinpointing some main issues, some fears, I think, definitely around this topic of pregnancy and growing up in a religious type environment. My dad is a deacon within the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up kind of in that religious upbringing. And, one of the main topics of conversation is this idea of sin, right? And being a woman and the original sin and all of these things that kind of come and play into your subconscious. Because I think one of the beliefs that I developed early on, especially when it comes to that sacral space, when it comes to that pelvic area, is, it's painful to be a woman. From the very beginning, I had super painful periods.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I became sexually active, the sex was never pleasurable. It was always painful. So I had this belief early on, I think, that space meant pain, that being a woman meant pain, and that in a way, subconsciously, I was suffering because I was a woman and because I was being sinful. So I was, having premarital sex, and we all know that that's a sin. And so I had a lot of these beliefs going on about what it means to be a woman, touching back into this whole idea of sexuality. So a lot of components that came into play. So as I was writing, I started connecting with other healers and other people that kind of just came into my path, I think, in divine timing and the information that I needed. So there's a lot of stuff that we could go into, depending on where you want to direct this conversation.
Yeah, if you want, yeah, go away. As far as not go away, take it away. Yeah, because it's interesting with the sexual side of things. Because I keep running up across, and I actually had someone on my podcast who I'm in her coaching program last year, and she's talking about reclaiming our feminine fire, and she does the embodiment work where you're starting off with breathing, and then you go into, as you breathe, you're kind of making noises, and then you're actually, the third part is like rocking your pelvis, like really moving, and then so you're like rocking, and you can be like yelling, getting all this stuff out, because a lot of times some things were like contracted in there and it's like stuck energy, so it's like to be able to let that out. And then I just saw something today come through from Dr. Kelly Brogan, who I love, who's wrote A Mind of Your Own, and she just was talking about another program about like really the reclaiming our sexuality and the orgasm. And yeah, I guess you're talking about some of that, the sin and the stuff that, and especially painful sex and painful periods. So maybe associating some of this with pain and constriction. So
Absolutely.
mm-hmm.
And that pelvic floor muscle, which really is like the support of your whole pelvis and your root, you're getting into the root chakra, holds a lot of emotions. So that whole like bowl, that pelvic bowl, really collects a lot of things. And that, and that sacral space goes really deep. That womb space, it's where we came from. It's where new life starts. So there's also not only what happens in your life, but you're picking up ancestral type energy from the women before you, from the lives before you. So it's a really deep space as you start to explore it. And I think, for me, having pain in that area early on, there was a disconnection that happened. I wasn't connected at all to that root part of my body. And as I started working with these other people that worked with energy and could see how my energy was flowing, they could see that disconnect. So I remember the first session I had with this energy healer who's helped me a ton. She told me that my sacral space was completely blown out. She's like, I can look through you, and it's like there's a big gaping hole of energy. So it's literally like disconnected from that area. So, I think a big part of the story is almost coming back and reconnecting and coming back into my body. So I think when you experience that amount of pain, like it's hard to describe how much pain comes with endo and having the start to my period that are just excruciating. There's a natural, like, disconnection with almost like I want to leave my body in a sense. If you've had that amount of pain, it's kind of like a protection thing, which is a big thing that came up in my story. And, as you're talking about these emotions getting held in that area, I think some of that is like a protection thing, and that's one thing that I did Reiki. So I did kind of some hands-on energy work as well. And that's what she told me the first session I had with her. She's like, you have a wall around you. It's like Fort Knox. Like, you're not getting in. So I've built up these walls around that area of protection. And a big part of healing was kind of letting some of that go, letting down those walls so that healing could come in.
And was that kind of through sessions with her, through writing? Like how did you sort of begin to heal the sacral chakra, which you say was sort of not even there or completely blocked?
Right, completely blown out. Mm-hmm. So this kind of ties in with trauma. So my first sexual encounter was not good. Mm-hmm. It was not consensual, very rough. And I didn't like to use the word rape at the time. I've always kind of shied away from that because it's a heavy word. Mm-hmm. But as I was working with this energy healer, she picked it up. I didn't even bring it up to her. She was able to identify that there had been trauma early in my life. Usually she's like, when I see things blown out like that, usually it's sexual trauma in this life. And she actually used the word rape with me. She's like, you were raped. Which again, that's a heavy word. It's not something I ever used. And I think a part of me subconsciously thought that it was my fault in a sense, because I didn't stop it, because it wasn't, this wasn't like in some back alleyway, like getting jumped from behind. This was somebody that I was in a relationship with, but wasn't ready and didn't want to do it. And it was rough and so uninvited. Mm-hmm. So that action was still impacting me like 20 years later. And I think at the time, I was young, I was 17 at the time. I didn't process a lot of those emotions. And I think I just kind of shrugged it off, like whatever. And again, that association between, okay, this is painful, sex is painful, I shouldn't be doing this. So in a way, this is like what I get, like this is my punishment. Mm. So I think that was the first initial step, was acknowledging that action had a huge impact on my energy, and it was still impacting me 20 years later. So I think a big part of the healing journey for me is, again, reconnecting back to that sacral space and feeling through things, because so often we're conditioned not to feel things. We're conditioned to numb things. That's how the medical system is set up. You get a pill for whatever's going on, just make the symptom go away. Let's not get deeper and address what's going on. Let's numb it, so pills, I had other numbing agents, be that sugar or food or shopping or some kind of distraction from actually feeling how I feel. So I think that's been a big journey to healing and reconnecting back into that, is allowing myself to feel those emotions. That way it's able to leave my body. It's not gathering.
Yeah, to really acknowledge it and notice it, whereas before you were, as you say, numbing it and not recognizing it. And then so through that work, then did you notice that things started to change a little bit in that area for the chakra?
Yep. So things changed quickly, which got me curious. So after having a session with this, so the one healer was kind of like an online, kind of at a distance. Mm-hmm. And then, doing the hands-on kind of Reiki type energy work. So it kind of had the two going at the same time. So the one online healer was identifying these issues for me. She was able to pick this up intuitively. And then I was able to go to this other lady and like, okay, this is what's going on. And she was helping me physically to remove it. So I remember having a session with her after I identified this. I let her know I had early trauma in my sacral space and it was impacting my heart space at the time. And she did a session with me, and I remember like laying there on the table, and she put her hands over like my pelvic area, like right there on my hip where I always have pain. And I didn't necessarily have pain at that moment. It was pretty calm. But as she put her hands over there, I started to feel it rise up. It's like I could feel the pain rise up, and I almost felt it like move down my leg, like down the meridian there. Mm-hmm. And like literally felt it leave me. really fascinating experience. And I woke up the next day so sore, like I had done like a full ab workout. Which is so odd to me. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, she just put her hands on me, and now I'm like really sore in my abdomen. And, over time, eventually the pain that I had with my periods just like dropped away. I mean, I still get pain, but it's mild. It's not anything near what it was. Yeah. So I experienced significant changes from the energy work, which really got me curious into learning more about it.
And so how long did that take from you meeting with these practitioners to you like, oh, wait, I've noticed a shift?
Yeah. So it was pretty quickly, like within the next cycle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely got me curious about what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did. So go ahead.
I was just saying, and I was writing, of course, through the book. So I was getting that release, also processing everything through the written word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done some Reiki, and I just over the holidays there, during Christmas, I went on a retreat and I did some cranial sacral therapy, which was kind of interesting because it was at one point I literally, because obviously had my eyes closed. At one point, I actually thought she'd left the room, and she actually had her hand underneath my butt, and I'm like, I thought she was gone. I actually opened my eyes. I'm like, oh, you're here. Like I thought she had left the room, and yeah, it is just sort of trying some of these different healing modalities, and really just like I had no expectations on any, like just going in with an open mind.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think one thing that I did, so prior to all of that, I actually had another session with a lady that was more into this idea of the divine feminine, feminine flow, getting that conversation.
Yeah.
And when she did an energy reading on me, and she told me that I had an imbalance in that sacral space between giving and receiving. So if you're familiar with the energy of, male and feminine energy, the right side of your body is more that masculine driven, get things done kind of energy. And then the left side is your feminine flow, creative, nurturing type energy. So she told me I had an imbalance with that male energy. So it's more of that giving type energy, doing things, being an entrepreneur. I'm sure you can relate to that. Mm-hmm. The do, go type mentality, which really is the world today. And I wasn't taking as much time on that opposite feminine side to relax and to receive help. So one thing that I did after identifying that, I need to receive more. I need to ask for help. I need to reach out and find these other people that can help me. And I started just setting a daily intention around that I was open to receiving. Like I'm open to receiving help and love and guidance. And like I was saying this every morning, and then I would meditate for 10, 15 minutes. And I think just doing that action and setting that intention every day really helped introduce these people into my life. So people just kind of started naturally coming into my path that were helping me make these dramatic shifts. And I think that came from me, again, setting that intention that I was open to receiving that help. And like I was ready to heal.
Absolutely, because those synchronicities can happen, but if you're got your eyes closed and not even noticing all the signs are there, and then being mindfully calling them in, and then when they come, saying, "Oh, okay."
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. For years, I was in corporate, and really, it was like this do, and I still kind of will default into that. And a lot of people that come to me are the same, and it's being able to being aware of the feminine side, the creative, the going with the flow, the like letting it be, and then noticing those people and things that are around you. And now if I see something, I just I follow it instead of questioning it, I just go.
Exactly. So I wasn't like looking to do energy work. Like this
Yeah.
wasn't on my radar. I wasn't like, I'm going to go do Reiki. But I set the intention, and it was actually one of my friends from IIN, my peer coach that I went through the program with, who paid for the session. She's like, I went and saw this woman and she's amazing. Like, you have to go see her. And she paid for my session. And that happened like shortly after I set that intention. It, like, came to me like in my inbox, like, here, go see this lady, it's paid for. So yeah, when you start to pay attention, you are being guided all the time if you're open to receiving that. So having that shift of, okay, and I think a big part of that, again, having that protection, is it comes back to control for me. And when you have, and especially when you have trauma in that space, you put up that protection and you want to control things. You know, it's a natural way to protect yourself. So if you're familiar with Caroline Mice, I think it's her name, Anatomy of the Spirit. One thing that she talks about there about the sacral chakra is it's all about control. It's all about that relationship with control and having that fear of losing control. So that's been a big part of the story, is kind of letting down those walls and kind of releasing some of that control and allowing help to come in.
Yeah, and with trauma or PTSD and endo, is this something you typically see a lot, or is like what's your experience with that, the connection?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely, with my clients, I've seen it. And it's not everybody. I think, you know, sexual trauma is very common with endo, but it's not everybody's experience. So I think it's also important to, like I said, in that sacral space, we pull up that ancestral energy as well. So trauma from your family, from down the line. There's a really interesting book called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Woolen, which I mentioned this in my book as well. He does studies of people who experienced similar trauma as family members in the past. So it's almost like the issue rises up again if it's not dealt with. So it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma in this lifetime, though it's very common that it is. That's another thing to consider as well, is, was there trauma, you know, in your family? So kind of exploring a larger picture.
So It Didn't Start With You by Mark. How do you spell the last name?
Wolyn. It's Wolynn.
Okay.
Very interesting book.
And so, and then kind of digging into that energy healing to help with this trauma has been helpful for you. Is there anything else kind of, is it more the journaling along with it too, to kind of get the thoughts out, or just being able to give voice to it, or?
So a lot of things kind of developed from that point. That was kind of the main issue for me, was dealing with that past trauma in my life and acknowledging it and feeling through it. So I remember after having that Reiki session where I literally felt it like leaving me, like I felt her rise it up.
Yeah.
There was a lot of emotions that came with that. A lot of emotions. And it was almost as though I was feeling that experience again in that space. So this was not a pretty process at all. It was a hard process going through this at the time, but, you know, finally feeling through that and releasing the emotions, I think, was a big part of it.
Actually, I was reading the book, oh boy, what's it called now? Healing Your Demons. And that actually was recommended by Alexandra Roxo, who talked about the feminine fire one. So it is kind of like, yeah, and she talks about her process too of extracting this, actually, and now I can't remember the actual process, but it kind of similar to being able to recognize it, and then you actually are giving it an actual body. Like, you can see it in front of you, sort of like this pain is a monster that looks whatever, or a person that looks like this. And then there's a process to take it it changes into your ally, and you kind of move through it to kind of give, sometimes you don't even know that trauma or that whatever it is stuck there. So be able to take it and see it outside of you, so you sort of face it. Yeah. Healing Your Demons, I think it's called. Nice. But I'll put a link on that at the show notes. Yeah. And so And as far as now, this kind of to switch, this is like switching completely our course here, but what's your take on CBD oil and endometriosis?
I do recommend CBD oil for endometriosis. I take it personally. It does help reduce a lot of the symptoms, and it supports your immune system. And I think it's a better alternative than a lot of the over-the-counter pain medications that can impact you. They impact your digestion and your liver. And if you're taking things like ibuprofen and that sort of thing all the time, it actually impacts ovulation as well. They've done studies that have shown that those can stop ovulation, which is not good if you're trying to get pregnant. So CBD is a natural choice, and I've seen a lot of success with it with my clients.
And how would you go about using it?
So I take it in a tincture form, but I also like the topical stuff as well. So I put that right on if I have sore joints or hips or my lower back. Just rub it right in.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't used it. It just everywhere I turn, I'm being inundated by CBD oil.
So not all CBD is the same. So definitely do your research. It's good to find something that's organic, full spectrum, so that it absorbs better in your body.
Do you have one that you recommend or like?
I do. I use Joy Organics. So you can find them at joyorganics.com. And if you use the code Peace with Endo, all one word, you actually save 10%.
Okay, nice.
So they are all organic. They're full spectrum. And I've seen great results with their product.
Typically like around with sort of around painful periods or like where how has it helped?
So you could take it also as a preventative type measure, just taking it every day. So similar to as you would take like a omega-3 every day. But then you could definitely use it during times of pain as well.
And what about, I saw you written a blog about genetic mutations and what it means for someone with endo. You had lots of comments on there. I was just looking at your website. You had an awesome website with lots of good blogs, and you have a podcast too. So what was your take on that? What did you discover for yourself?
I got really deep into the rabbit hole there a few years back. I was quite involved with the genetic side of things. I did the 23andMe, got my results, and it was evident to me why I have endometriosis, like getting the results back and starting to dig into the data that was there. I have issues releasing and detoxing estrogen, which is a fuel for endo. Super sensitive to toxins. My body has a hard time releasing them. So it's evident to me doing the test and then digging into it that I was messed up, I guess, which wasn't necessarily good. So it kind of shifted a little bit away from focusing so much on that side of things because I personally got overwhelmed. I don't have a background in biochemistry by any means. I was trying to piece together, the methylation cycle and all these different factors that play.
The rabbit hole is big on that one.
Absolutely. And there's a site called NutraHacker.com where you can put your raw data and it gives you like supplements and what to take and what not to take. And it was very overwhelming to me, because I had a lot of issues and a lot of supplements that I would have to take, and some of them contradicted with each other. And ultimately what I came away with is I need to find like a functional doctor or somebody who's more familiar with this. I didn't just want to start throwing supplements in, not really knowing what I was doing. But a lot of that shifted. I came across Anthony William, who completely changed my life. He's the author of the Medical Medium books. And he talks about methylation in his newest book, which is Liver Rescue, which I highly recommend.
I haven't read that one yet. I read all the rest of his, but I haven't read that one.
So super interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But he does bring up the genetic stuff. He brings up methylation. And ultimately what it comes back to is you need to support your liver. Like if you come up and if you show all these breakdowns and these mutations on these tests, really all that's showing you is that you have issues with your liver and you need to address that part of your body, which is a big component when it comes to endo and healing. So yeah, I kind of released the genetic rabbit hole. I came out and have focused more on that side of things. Like you can change those mutations. You can change that report through diet and lifestyle changes. So rather than me focusing so much on all these little broken pieces, I kind of step back and looking at the bigger picture of, okay, I'm going to heal my liver. I'm going to focus on these positive food and lifestyle changes.
Yeah, I like the book by Dr. Ben Lynch, Dirty Genes, because he just kind of makes it really simple. Sort of here's some main tips, and then and a lot of it just comes back to diet and lifestyle. And obviously, if there's gut infections, digging deeper with stool testing and the like. But because otherwise, it just becomes this thing you're chasing, and then you get yourself more stressed out going down there. Whereas, like, just go back to the basics of organic, looking at, non-inflammatory foods. If there's gut infections, what are the stressors, mental, emotional stressors? And he actually I follow him on Instagram. He cracks me up, but he was like, I'm sick and I deserve to be sick, because he has MTHFR. So he's not methylating, methylation issues. And he was just saying, I went to a conference and I went to bed late. I was around. It was a whole bunch of things that he had done lifestyle wise. I didn't go to bed late. I worked 18 hours because I was doing X, Y, and Z. So it was kind of interesting to see. Really, it's being in tune with your body, mm-hmm. and seeing and listening to your body.
Absolutely.
And taking the necessary steps. A lot of it is like slowing down, focusing on self-care, and really listening to what you need, instead of pushing ahead and researching or doing whatever you default into when you're not sure about something. Kind of, they see those patterns that keep coming up again and again.
Absolutely. And, and I think for me, again, it was that mindset that, like, I'm broken, like, look at all these.
Yeah, it proves it. Yeah.
There it is on paper, and that's not a good mindset to have, because you can change things, So I think I just personally got overwhelmed with it all. Like,
Mm-hmm.
So stepping back, going back to the basics.
Mm-hmm. And then for here in the energy healing side of things, how is it as you went through the book and as you was writing the book and sort of looking at these different energy healers, and then having your own process through it? What did you come out the other end with? Any kind of revelations, or what was the takeaway, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I think the biggest lesson that I've learned, again, it goes back to that issue of control, which is evident, in my self-healing journey. Mm-hmm. When you get it in your head, like, I'm going to heal myself, and start to make changes, and you can almost go, too far, in a sense of, I'm trying to control everything and I need to change everything in my diet, and you get almost stressed out to that point.
Rigid.
Exactly. So that's the main issue I've identified is, again, that fear of losing control. And I think the ultimate lesson, I think this is an ultimate soul lesson. I think it's the big reason, the ultimate lesson of my life and why I have endometriosis is, learning to let go and learning to surrender. And a big part of that for me is connecting back to that spiritual place and knowing that, I'm always being guided and I'm safe and protected here on this earth, in this existence. So that's something I've kind of tried to change in my mindset, that I'm safe. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big issue that came up not only in this lifetime, but lifetimes ago, that I've identified that I had issues feeling safe. And I think that comes back to, again, that control issue and goes back to that sacral space. Mm-hmm. So it's been letting down those walls and kind of building trust again, in a sense. So one positive side effect that came through the whole journey, obviously the pain with my periods went away, but the sex with my husband became better. The pain that was there went away as well. And if you get into that sacral space, and the whole element of it is water, things became lubricated again naturally, which is good. It's good for sex. It's good.
Mm-hmm. That always works, yeah.
It's good if you're trying to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. So that was one positive effect as well, letting down the walls and surrendering and allowing. So again, it's reconnecting back to that divine feminine energy that I've kind of shoved away in this achievement type personality that I have, which also comes back to that control factor, because when you're an achiever and always trying to do things, and it's very much like an outwardly type expression rather than coming inwards, which I think is more that divine feminine kind of reconnecting back to the truth of who I am, kind of more to that soul energy. So yeah, lots of stuff. I think the main lesson is learning to, one, receive. So it's okay to let down those walls and receive help. And then kind of surrendering to the process and allowing instead of trying to control everything.
And how do you, on a daily basis, kind of get into that mind space? So if you're doing the meditation, is that kind of like a cornerstone or a foundation of it, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, meditation is big for me. It's a must. And protecting myself as well. I know that's kind of opposite of what I just said in surrendering, but one thing that I've identified as I've gotten into the energy work, actually started working with one of my spiritual mentors that helped me a lot to actually do energy work on other people, is that I'm an empath. So I think a big part with endo, if you have chronic pain in general, you're going to be more sensitive to energy because your nervous system is like hyped up all the time. Mm-hmm. So also understanding that as well, and knowing that I'm very much influenced by the energy that's around me, by the people that I surround myself with, by the situations that I'm in. So learning how to protect my energy was life-changing for me, and realizing that I was picking up on a lot of stuff from other people. So that's a big part of my meditation practice as well, is kind of like, okay, I'm safe, I'm protected, but I'm also allowing and surrendering to the process. And I think that time of meditation is really a time of receiving, because that's a time to connect to your higher self, to your guides, to your angels, to God, whatever you believe. You have to get silent in order to connect to kind of that intuitive space.
Yeah, I had major resistance to meditation, but it really, for me, has been just, it is that grounding piece. And now, I remember in the beginning, I was like, 5 minutes. There is no way I could sit here for 5 minutes. And then I'm like, 10 minutes. Okay, that's still a lot. I'll do 10 minutes. And now I'm at 20, and I literally, and even maybe I can go half hour, maybe I'll push myself to do that the next little while. But the 20 minutes is like, I feel like I snap my fingers and I'm like, 20 minutes is done. I'm like, really? I'm done? Okay. And I just find it, I've added in, last year I was adding in tarot cards to it. This year I just went and saw Colette Baron Reed, and I've added in the wisdom of the oracle. So I'm like pulling a little card at the end of the meditation too. And I use heart math too, to kind of get into that, the heart rate variability. I can see when my mind is off doing my to-do list and not really in that coherence spot. So I kind of like that tracking piece, even though I'm not a huge data tracking kind of person, because even the Fitbit, I did that I didn't really like the Fitbit thing. I didn't really care about tracking my steps. I just walked. But this is kind of cool to see. I'm like, I got in a good state of mind for the heart rate variability. So I find that kind of neat. Do you use anything like that, or you're just?
No, I haven't heard of that. Interesting.
Yeah, heart math. Yeah, so kind of getting into that space of using, and then that sets the intention for the day, and then you're able to create these boundaries of creating that safe space, and then sort of people around you that potentially are if they're toxic, or if they're just not have you in a good mind space, then you're able to kind of protect yourself a little more from that. Absolutely. Taking on that energy. Yeah.
And it's important, I think, especially when you're living with a chronic illness, is to be aware, the energy that you surround yourself with, and especially when you're susceptible to picking it up. And that's a big reason why I started Peace with Endo, because there's a lot of negative information out there about endometriosis if you get into it. And even getting into the community, there's a lot of pain, and it's easy to pick that up. So that's one of my incentives starting out was, okay, I'm going to come out and be, more of a positive voice. And that does make a difference when you surround yourself by people who are positive and who believe that it's possible to get better. Because one of the first things I heard with endo was like, there's no cure, you're never going to get better, you may never get pregnant, all of these negative messages. So surrounding yourself with the positive messages really makes an impact on your mindset. And being an empath, it's even more important to set those boundaries. to be protective of your energy.
Mm-hmm. And as far as any resources, anything you're obsessed with right now, be it a book, a website, an app, anything you're digging?
Yep. And as I mentioned, I'm a big medical medium fan. So Anthony William has changed my life.
Yes.
If you haven't checked out the medical medium books, highly recommend doing so.
Mm-hmm.
So my first book that's out there right now is From Pain to Peace with Endo. Mm-hmm. So I do share more of the lessons that I've learned along the way with diet and digestion and stress and detoxification within that first book. And then my next Energetics of Endo, again, is coming out February 22nd.
Very nice. Very nice. And any success stories you'd like to share with us? What comes to mind?
Success stories. So I remember the first person that I worked with as I stepped into this world of energy was another woman with Endo. And she came to me, she was having issues with sex drive. So she wasn't really feeling like she was in the mood at all anymore. And intuitively, I went back to that whole balance of giving and receiving. I was like, she's probably giving too much, which turned out to be true. As I talked to her, she was an entrepreneur and she really wasn't taking time for self-care. She was always, attending to her clients and like spending all of her time doing these other things and not making space for her. So I did some energy work with her. Definitely felt some stuff in that sacral space. And she did email me a few weeks later, maybe a month or so later, and she told me that she was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if I had anything to do with that, but it was kind of cool. That was the first person I ever worked on, and she did it.
Oh, geez. Well, that's meaningful and exciting. Yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So you have a free guide here for our listeners. So it's 25 natural pain relief strategies. And you can go to peacewithendo.com / pain-relief. Can you kind of share with them what they'll get for that?
Mm-hmm. So that's just got some different strategies in there to help you naturally manage the pain. So some of the stuff we've talked about, the CBD that I recommend is in there, different foods, and also different things you can do like visualization, meditation. So just give you some ideas to try. But I know that's one of the number one complaints with endo is the pain. Mm-hmm. So finding a way to find some relief from that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today, sharing your words of wisdom, and really kind of coming at this from a new perspective, and that you've noticed changes in yourself as well as your clients. I really think it's the energetic side of things. It's like we kind of focus over here. You can go down the functional medicine side and diet and all that, but then we've forgotten about the whole spiritual side, which is equally as important. So thanks for sharing that with our listeners.
Absolutely. Definitely something to consider. And, for me, it was like hitting the wall, like I'm not getting any better. So yep, definitely be open. Mm-hmm. It's all that's out there.
I love it. Great. Thank you. Hey there, Sarah Clark here. So are you struggling to have your baby? First of all, please know that my heart goes out to you. I support couples worldwide who are struggling with infertility to conceive and have healthy babies. Women like Rita, who gave birth to her beautiful daughter after following my fertility coaching system. Or Danielle, who after 2 failed IUIs was able to get pregnant after a supercharger fertility discovery call with me. So here's how you get my help for free. So I offer a free supercharger fertility discovery call. And on that call, I'll create a plan with you that is going to help you fast track your success. So this call is not for everyone. And I'm really picky about who I get to speak with. And I have a strict but totally reasonable criteria that needs to be met in order for us to move forward. So here's who I can help. So first of all, you need to be able to explore your infertility diagnosis in a new light. So this offers for people who are open-minded, they're coachable, and if you can do that and want to double or triple your chances at the fertility clinic or get pregnant, awesome. So let's get on the phone and chat. Also, you must be an action taker. So someone who's committed to seeing results, you're able to follow directions. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do anything bizarre. But if you're one of those people who like to consume a ton of information, but don't like to spend time implementing and seeing results, then the call's not really for you. So I only want to spend time with people who are genuinely committed to their own success. So just click on the link in the show notes and apply, or go to fabfertile.com and click on the free consult. So it's a really short application that just tells you about your health, how long you've been trying to conceive, and how soon you'd like to be pregnant. So seriously, this is going to be the best time you've ever spent on your fertility. Looking forward to chatting. Talk soon. Thank you for listening to Get Pregnant Naturally. Seriously, it means the world to me that you're here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of upcoming episodes. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you're a U.S. resident, text FERTILE to 345-345. You'll be prompted to enter your email address and you'll receive our Fertility Yoga download. In this 20-minute intro video, we focus on a calming and peaceful practice to connect back to your heart. These simple fertility yoga poses can help quiet negative thoughts and make you feel more in control. Download it now and get started today. So for U.S. residents, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 345-345. For non-U.S. residents, go to www.yogafreebie.com to access your special gift. That's www.yogafreebie.com to access the free fertility yoga download. And I love this quote by Dr. Mark Hyman, Medical Director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine and Chairman of the Institute for Functional Medicine. Functional medicine is medicine by cause, not by symptom. Functional medicine practitioners don't in fact treat disease. We treat your body's ecosystem. We get rid of the bad stuff, put in the good stuff, and because your body is an intelligent system, it does the rest. Thanks for listening. Until next time.